Hello, Rebels of the Sherpa Revolution. Normally, I start off this podcast by saying hi, but I'm going to start this one off by saying hydration. We know how important hydration is for our bodies. It's the thing that keeps us running, right? You want to be a well-oiled machine. You want to be running efficiently. You know what can help you run efficiently? Liquid IV. It is the category-winning hydration brand fueling your well-being, and the hydration multiplier is the one product that you are missing in your daily routine. It comes in a little stick that's a powder, and in just one stick, you get 5 essential vitamins and 2 times faster hydration than water alone. If you use it first thing in the morning, maybe before a workout, when you feel run down, maybe after a long night out and doing a little partying, you know what I mean? And even what if you have like a long flight or something like that and you just bleh, right? We all feel that way. Bleh. So add this to your water, and that convenient packaging can go with you anywhere you go, even if you're going to the gym or you're traveling or you're at work and maybe you didn't have a great breakfast. At least it's something that will fuel you up in the morning. And there's a whole bunch of flavors that are available, like sea berry, strawberry lemonade, Concord grape, lemon lime, pina colada, tropical punch, watermelon, strawberry, passion fruit, guava, acai berry. Did I say that right? I never know how to say that. But those are just some of the flavors. Here's some statistics for you folks. 1 stick of liquid IV in 16 ounces of water contains 5 essential vitamins, B3, B5, B6, B12, and even vitamin C. And we all know how important those B vitamins are. It's got 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks. It's made with premium ingredients. It's non-GMO, and it is free from gluten, dairy, and soy. I'm going to offer you a great deal, Rebels. If you go to liquidiv.com and use offer code Sherpa, you can get 20% off of anything that you order on that site when you're shopping for some better hydration. So that's Liquid IV. Check it out at liquidiv.com. Podcast that you're listening to is being presented to you in cooperation with the SJ Network. If you're a person who'd like to appear on a podcast, contact Stephen Joyner at s-j-network.com. Let's get on with the show.
Today, on Too Many Podcasts, Jesse Blaze Snider returns, with a new podcast called Coolest Geek Alive, and a new graphic novel in the works.
Speaking of writing, my therapist told me to write letters to people I hated and then burn them. I've done that, but what do I do with the letters?
Welcome to Too Many Podcasts, the podcast about podcasts. Now, podcasting from the Sherpa Chalet on Mount Podcastia, here's your host, Jim, the Podcast Sherpa.
Hello there, Rebels of the Sherpa Revolution. Welcome to Too Many Podcasts. It is the podcast about podcasts and so much more. Jim, the Podcast Sherpa, here with you, coming to you from Sherpa Lou Studios, high atop Mount Podcastia. Glad to know that you've tuned in. I don't know what to say. Tuned in? Is that right? Yeah, we hit the button. I'm glad you hit the button. So, before we get started and we talk about our guest, I have a little bit of business to take care of. Apparently, somebody had something to say about me on Twitter, and I don't know why. This is a person that I have no idea who they are, and they don't know me, as far as I know. A Matt Bishop, we're going to call him out by name. He made a comment about a podcast Sherpa, and he posted I don't know if you say GIF or GIF or whatever, one of those little pictures with the videos in it, of a shepherd, not a Sherpa. So, Matt Bishop, congratulations. I am so glad that you get to put your ignorance on display in front of tens of people on social media. And I understand you have a podcast called the Terrible Wrestling Takes Podcast. And, I'm a podcast Sherpa, so I felt it my duty to check it out. And I got to say, you're doing a really good job of putting people to sleep. And it's more than appropriate that the word terrible is in your title. So let's send this one right out to you, Matt Bishop.
You imbecile! You bloated idiot! You stupid fathead! You...
This could very well be the stupidest person on the face of the earth. Perhaps we should shoot him.
Now that we've dispensed with the pleasantries, let's talk about our guest today.
Who's our guest today, Sherpa?
You know him. He's been here before in Season 3 back in 2020. His name is Jesse Blaze Snider. Jesse does so much. The last time he was on, he had an album to promote called Come With Me If You Want to Live, and had some fantastic rock tracks on that. If you listen to that interview on the Sherpa Screening Room, you'll hear a couple of those tracks, and they're really amazing. The guy definitely knows how to rock. And now he's got a podcast out, and it is called The Coolest Geek Ever, because he is a comic book writer, and he's actually working on a graphic novel as well. So we had a great talk. Jesse's always a lot of fun. We know that. Word of warning before I say any more, the language here gets a little bit salty because Jesse is very expressive, to say the least. And he's a lot of fun, though, anyway. So maybe if you've got kids in the room or in the car, you might want to fast forward a little bit toward the end of the interview, just to play it safe, and then listen later on headphones. He definitely has a lot of interesting things to say, as he always does. So let's have a listen right about now. Hello there, Rebels. We are here in the comic book room at the Sherpa Chalet, and the guest that I have today, he is a friend of the show, and he's made a return. It's been 3 years, believe it or not.
Yeah, so glad to be back.
And, you know, I was thinking this afternoon before we set up our interview that I think it's kind of hard to keep tabs on you because there aren't enough tabs to go around to keep on you.
You know what, man? I'm bad at it. I'm such a weirdo. You know, it's interesting because this whole show, you know, like you know, about being embarrassed, making mistakes. You know, that whole idea of people watching you, right? Mm-hmm. That's when embarrassment comes in. It's like the idea that you're being observed. And my whole life, because of the nature of celebrity and my father being, you know, for those of you who are meeting me for the first time, and this usually isn't the first thing I bring up, but it's very interesting. I'm very self-conscious. I got the idea that people felt as though anybody connected to money or celebrity essentially had it easy and that everything was going to just be easy for them. And it really made me mad that the impression was no matter what you do, it will be viewed as it was easy for you. So at a certain point, being the kind of, you know, pig-headed idiot that I am, I was like, call those people. No, they can't tell me that I'm not riding the coattails. I'm gonna swerve this way, and I'm gonna go that way, and I'm gonna do everything that I can to deny people the satisfaction of being able to say that I rode his. And the only reason I'm here is because my celebrity father has made it so. And that's like, I mean, it's real bullshit now that I went and shot myself in the foot 1,000 times. But you know, the reality is, there's sort of good that comes with it and there's bad that comes with it. It goes both ways. So it really, everything's always equalizing, but there's a perception from people that there isn't like this equalization, and people don't want to give you credit. They find out who you are and they'll be like, well, we know why he got that job. Like, no, you know, I got the job because I can speak well. And, you know, that's what the job is or whatever it might be. But I put, you know, that people say 110%. I used to say that and think that all the time. Nowadays, I go, no, 100%, 100%. The best you can do, that's what I do. There is no reason to give any extra than 100%. 100% is it. But 110%, like that's what I was going for a long time. And I was just tiring myself out trying to control the way people perceive me. And I tell you what, you know, like you said, I do this comic book, I do voiceovers, I do hosting. I'm kind of all over the place. And because I have such a weird relationship with being observed, it makes me really weird on social media. I kind of don't know what to do half the time. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm supposed to do social media, but I don't really care about the superficial side of this. I'm like, who's my friend, and follow that person. And I try to be myself, but I have an irreverent sense of humor. So sometimes it all ends up making me go less and less social media. And I only do it just like a little bit here, there, but it's been nice doing the podcast. So since last I've been here, the past 4 months, I hooked up with the Podcast Playground, and I'm doing this great podcast called Coolest Geek Alive. So if you're a geek culture guy out there and you ever want to hear my take on some of the latest stuff, which is all about the adaptation of geek culture material into TV and film, and just all the ways in which they're kind of screwing it up. Not kind of, they're screwing it up because basically because they're not fans and they don't care about it the way that somebody like me cares about it. And we've talked about this last time. I've written for Marvel, I've written for DC, I've written Disney, Pixar, and the Muppets, and all these different comic book companies. But like, I'm not some fair weather celebrity guy. I'm not like some Hollywood guy. I don't care. I don't care about that. I love comics. I love comic books. I could have chose to write movies. I could have chose to write anything that I want. I was in college for journalism and advertising and all these things. I chose comics because that's what I read and that's what I love. And honestly, I chose comics because I think that that's our best chance to change the world for the better. Comic books and the concepts within them, the ability to tell sweeping science fiction stories. It's the same deal with like animation and Disney animation, why I get so mad when they're not being done right. Because it's my belief that that is the art on planet Earth that has the best chance at melting someone's heart and making them feel empathy for their fellow man. And that's all I want. I got 4 kids and I just want to make the world a better place. And honestly, I feel like I'm behind on it. So, I'm in a big rush.
Yeah, that was actually a very interesting comment that you made on the onset of our interview about riding on your dad's coattails. By the way, this is Jesse Blaze Snider. We never get to say that. Hi, Jesse. And,
I love to just like grab people by the nose and it's like pull them in to my mania.
Because it's interesting because I actually had planned on saying this to you because we met 3 years ago and, you came on the show and you were promoting an album and you can hear the passion in your music. And when I listened to an episode of the Coolest Geek Alive, your insanely hot podcast, and we've over 1 million downloads, the passion is there. If you don't make that kind of stuff up, that's either authentic or it's not. And if people don't understand that, I think that's more on them than it is on you, Jesse.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. It's that means a lot to me, actually. It's funny. I talked about this the other day on the show, but I remember there's a great comic book writer named James Robinson. Trying to think what he's like most well known for. He's written some really big comics at DC. A lot of his stuff was a little bit before I had gotten there. So he only did a couple things after the fact. But James is a really great guy, an elder statesman of the comic book community. I met him times, and he's a Brit. And the third time I met him, I'm like on a dance floor, like a party, just kind of like chatting with him or whatever. And he goes, "You know what your problem is, mate?" It's like, uh-oh. He goes, "You're too genuine. People meet you and they think there's no way that this guy is really this genuine. And then they meet you again. And they're like, well, there he is, still doing that genuine thing. And then they meet you a third time and they go, oh, God, I guess he really is this genuine." And that kind of like, it takes 3 times to meet me before people let their guard down and are like, okay, yeah. But it's just the nature of a lot of people in society. My mom is a fashionista and an artist, and she couldn't help herself in sort of teaching all of the members of the family to try to look good, to present themselves well. Right. Mom used to bleach my hair, and she would like we would go to do like a holiday at family's house, and she'd be like doing everybody's makeup, and 3 out of 4 of the children are boys, and she'd be like, making sure we all. So what you end up having like a bit of a like a little angel and devil on your shoulder, like worrying about whether or not you're presenting yourself okay. So when you get good at presenting yourself okay, because your mom is in your head going, are you presenting yourself okay? You like kind of forget all about it because it's not really something that you do.
Right.
When people go into the world, a lot of times the people who are presenting themselves good, they're the crappy ones because they put all their efforts into how do I present the thing? And then everybody, they get used to, okay, these guys who are presenting the right way, they're not really like foundationally, they're not so good. So you end up like here's the thing, like in the dating world, perhaps there's like 15% of the guys who are banging all the girls. And those guys are generally making the other boys look bad. They've got more options and they are picking and choosing. And these girls are like, these guys are not these 15% of the guys that all of you are sharing. The shared men are making the non-shared men seem like, I don't know, not as appealing. But that's not on the average person. And they say you can't judge a book by its cover. And people love to go, oh, okay, well, don't judge that person because they're not like super attractive. Well, there's also people who are like, kind of cool, kind of punk rock, kind of, somebody's got a mohawk or somebody's a little goth. And, people will style themselves a little bit. And people tend to be very much, here's the cover of the book. They're a goth. Here's the cover of the book. They're a punk. And, that screws me up a lot of times. Half the time I got a big mohawk up on my head and people go, I don't know what people think when they see the mohawk. For me, it's a representation of fuck you, society. I'm going to do whatever I want. And then but I'm very nice. I'm like a caretaker. I walk around and I try to be really sweet to people. I believe if you see something, say something in a good way. If you see something positive, you should always share it. And I try to, be somebody who focuses on the positive things. I focus on the things that I love and I try to talk about those things. But it's definitely a thing. It's been a thing for me of people misunderstanding who I am. And you know what? A lot of it, too, is just how in my own head I've been because of, how I was raised. So now I've literally come full circle where I'm just like, all right, fuck it. I don't care what any of these people think about me. I know what my intentions are and I'm a good guy and I just want the world to be better and I want people to be happier and I want things to be nicer. And I make art for those reasons. I make music for those reasons. And if people don't notice, then as you said, it's not my problem. It's their problem. But for a long time, I definitely let it get in my way.
It does, and I'm sure, being a dad too, you want to impart that on your children as well to, that, you don't have to be judged like that by one little thing. It's.
Oh yeah. Big time. I said to my daughter the other day, because she deals with and it's funny, these are things that are hard to say, hard to accept when you're a child. And, but they are things that really do affect things, which is jealousy. And, people don't realize how real it is because most of us are aware of the idea of being like egotists. And we're trying to be level-headed and not be somebody who's thinking of so full of themselves all the time. On every level, you're at a job, you're competing for things on social media. People will start competing with you. People will start viewing you as their rivals. People will invariably take a aspect of you to heart, positively or negatively, like, oh, wow, they've got me on this level and I got to crush them or I got to compete or I admire them. Or you're going to end up making other people feel intimidated. And that's something that I have kind of dealt with. Is like my family, and I really believe this is the thing. It's like a good work ethic. Like be brave and go and try and expect to succeed if you really give it a try.
Sure.
And that attitude has allowed me to succeed all the time. I succeed at everything that I try at to some degree or another. It's usually not to the degree that I want to succeed at. I'm always shooting for the fences. And then I'm so disappointed when I didn't quite make it as far as I wanted to go. But I do succeed. And a lot of people aren't told that. And it's always been the thing that I say is the greatest gift that I ever got from my father was that he was the proof that it was possible. He was living proof. And when he said I could do something, I went, well, clearly I can because you have. So most people don't have that. They look at their parents and they go, well, my mom and dad, they're not happy. They're not doing the things that they love to do. My mom and my dad, they both do the things that they love for their life and they make money and happy to do it. That's just amazing encouragement. So, for my daughter, I told her at a certain point in time, and she was dealing with a lot of jealousy because she's a really beautiful girl. She's also very smart. She's on the dean's list. She's getting high up there. And she's on the gymnastics team. She's an athlete. This day and age, being a really fit and attractive, smart person, she's getting into the upper echelons. And I said to her, I said, look, people are going to want to give you false credit because you're pretty. Don't take it and don't think anything of it, but recognize that it's something that people throw around. People are going to want to give you false credit and power because you're smart and you do well in school. But don't take it and don't think of that as a thing. But just be aware that people are going to be affected by these things because you're an athlete, because you're related to a celebrity. Your grandfather is a famous guy. Sometimes people will literally go out of their way to be rude to me because I don't know. They think maybe nobody's ever been rude to me or something. But there's 25% of the population are those people who, when they find out something like that, they're like, I don't like that. And they will be not nice to you. And then there's another 25% of the population who will be too nice, who will be so nice to you that you're uncomfortable. You're like, oh, please, just make me feel for a second like I'm a normal person, because this is making me feel very, very weird, And fortunately, half the people in the world are normal people, and they just treat you like anybody else. They'll be like, oh, that's cool, but whatever, you're you, or oh, I don't care, but you're you, and you're nice. Those are the people you want. And my children, all of them, I told them, I said, you got to recognize that all of this stuff is nonsense, and you always have to use any bullshit power that you've been given for good, because it's nonsense, and you shouldn't have been given that in the first place. It was silly that I was given any power over people, but going into situations, recognizing that because I was the famous kid, I had power over a group. And when somebody was nasty to somebody else, I'd be like, what the fuck? That was messed up. You should say sorry to them. Because I could do that, because they gave me all this false power, and it's not real. It's just nonsense that but depending on the groups, they'll literally like kowtow to you for nonsense. So for me, it was like, you have to earn it so that all the false credit that they give you is real. You can give me the false credit. I now deserve it. I've lived long enough and researched long enough, and I know enough that if I get the false credit, not only will I use it for good, but I do deserve it now, because I worked to be extra so that I could deserve it. And that's why, that's what I push my kids to do, to show up and be 100% and know that if you do that, that's all anybody can ask. And you'll get better, and you might make mistakes, but you'll get better and you'll get better. You'll always be improving. And under those circumstances, you don't have to sit there and fret and worry about yourself and be an anxiety and depressed person like I was for the first 30 years of my life. I mean, I'm still dealing with the ramifications of being a crazy anxiety and depressed person for 30 years, really hardcore. And then 10 years of going, oh my goodness, what have I done to myself? I need to calm down. Even though I'm still all hyped, because I have so much love. I was telling my kids today, because I'll get really mad at them. And I'm like, the thing with daddy is he has much more available love, but he also has much more available frustration. So you end up being just like a manic, crazy person until you can slowly calm yourself down over time. And that's the place I'm finally getting to. And I'm really starting to feel like an adult.
And along those lines, I mean, I'm not to kind of shift the topic a little bit.
Shift.
Your podcast actually draws on a lot of different parts of your life, which I find really interesting.
Yeah. So
pardon the pun on the word draw, but
backstory on some of that there, right? So I write comic books. I was originally going to be an artist. Mm-hmm. I got hit by a car when I was 11, and I didn't properly heal from the injury. It wasn't until I was 30 that I realized how much I hadn't healed from the injury. I played sports my whole life, and for a long time, I was trying to be an artist. I used to get very frustrated with my ability to sort of get what was in my mind onto the page. Mm-hmm. And it was my back. My hands would shake, and I would go a little slow. I was still pursuing art when I switched high schools, but I had an art teacher who really removed my enthusiasm from me in a terrible way. One of those teachers who just kind of made it so not fun that I was like, fuck this. I'm like, if I have to do this with him, I don't want to do it. But at the same time, I had a great teacher, shout out to Mrs. Krinsky, who was an English teacher with a class called Independent Writing for Publication, where every assignment was sent out to a contest. So I was winning and runner-up and honorable mentions and published here and published there for poetry and feature articles, essays, a one-act play, anything you could think of, basically. We would submit these things. And after, 40 things got submitted for the school year, hey, 10 of them, I got some accolades or whatever it might be. So it was really great because it just gave you such an outpouring of, or an outlet, so many outlets for your creativity, and to really learn as a writer. If you wanted to be a writer, it was such a great class. You'd be like, what do I like to do here? And I really like to do a lot of it. I like essay writing. I like journalism. So it has come full circle. Sometimes when I do my podcast, I'll write the whole thing out because I want to get it right. I try to get to a place where I just do notes and then I jump in and and I get the whole thing out in general. But invariably, I'm writing my notes and I'm like, I have something I need to say right now. And and so I go back and forth between doing like a speech, this, long article that I've written, and talking about the comics. And now the comics is where I went into as a writer professionally, and I've written for Marvel and DC and Disney, Pixar and stuff, but obviously I have a lot of experience as a journalist as well. I used to write comic book reviews and do interviews for comic book creators at a website called The Pulse, which was a sister website to The Beat, which is still around, but The Pulse isn't around for people who know comics here. But I went into hosting because I had a agent meet me at a party, and he thought that he could get me some work. So I said, okay. And all of a sudden I was up to my neck in auditions in New York, and I was pretty quickly hired by MTV2 to host their MTV2 Rock show. And then I bounced around hosting shows. And then from hosting, I switched into voiceovers. And then voiceovers, I've done everything. I'm the voice of Pizza Hut and the voice of GameStop and the voice of Cheetos and Kia Motors and so many. I'm still the voice of all those I did for years, here or there. To this day, I'm the voice of Food Paradise, which is on Discovery and Travel Channel. It's been bouncing around. But if you hear Food Paradise, next on Food Paradise. So I know how the sausage is made in the entertainment world in a lot of ways. When it gets into TV and films and stuff, it's a little bit more by virtue of friends and family and close loved ones. Like my brother, who's one of my best friends, he is an award-winning filmmaker. He made a short film called Fool's Day, which is considered to be one of the greatest short films ever made. I think it's the greatest ever made. Look up Fool's Day and Cody Blue Snider if you want to watch something great for 15 minutes. It's awesome. One of these days, it's going to get adapted into a long-form film. He's been dealing with lots of Hollywood hell kind of production stories to get it off the ground. But I've watched his career, and I have so many good friends, who are in the business, whether it's somebody like I just lost Jason David Frank, who was a good friend of mine, the Green Power Ranger. And so many people are within my realm. So I know how these things are getting made. I know how editorial works. I know how production works. And I make music as well. Music for me, I specifically went into music for TV, music for films, music for things, for purpose, as opposed to like trying to just be a rock star. I was making music for practical reasons. All of these things mean I get it, unfortunately. I unfortunately get it because it's being done wrong 99% of the time. 99% of the time, it's being run by business people, and they don't have taste. Their taste is money. And money, you don't need any taste to recognize the value of money. To recognize the value of music, to recognize the value of a comic book or film, you need taste. There are other worthless metrics that people use to make determinations like, well, what actor is it? Is it a subject of the moment? These are how decisions are generally made in Hollywood. That's why we see things where like all of a sudden this crazy social correction that's gone on, where all of a sudden all the movies are basically painting the exact same societal picture all at once, because everybody in Hollywood is a follower. The amount of people who actually go, I know what I like, and what they like is something that your average person would like if you polled it. And they're not just pulling random shit that is just a personal preference, out of things. People love to think like Quentin Tarantino, it's like, that's what it means to be an auteur. No, man. Writing stories, creating fiction is about telling somebody about a person who needs something and telling us about how hard they're working to get the thing that they want and they need. And if you tell us how hard they're working in the right way, we don't care what happens as long as they get the thing that they want, because we want to see them get the thing that they want. That's it. That is what fiction is. That's what storytelling is. It's, here's a guy. He's got something he wants. He doesn't have it yet, but by the end of the movie, maybe he'll get it. And everybody is getting wrapped up in all this other shit. You want to freaking control an audience, have them care. It's about that. If you do that really well, you win. But there are a lot of other social kind of factors to it. And that is what we end up talking about a lot on the show, of just sort of where they're going wrong, of like, here's what we're trying to do, and then here's what they're doing. Why are they doing this and jumping the thing? Because they don't understand. And that really is what it comes down to. And I'll say one last thing. The worst part of it is, it's worse than that. In a lot of cases, they actually think that the geek culture audience, the audience that bought the Lord of the Rings novel, that they're somehow different than the mainstream audience who wouldn't buy the novel. And that's not true. The audience that bought the novel are simply human beings who read. Human beings who don't read wouldn't buy the novel. But if they did read, they'd read that novel too. And they'd think, this is a great novel. But Hollywood, head up their ass, thinks, no, I'm better than these nebbish guys from my high school who weren't as interested in fucking as I was. They weren't interested in drinking as I was. They weren't interested in drugs as I was. They were interested in reading this book or playing some D&D. Those people are fundamentally different than me. And it's not true. It's not true. And I mean, that's the whole coolest Geek Alive thing is really like I'm a mainstream guy. I'm the guy that they want to accept into every one of these groups, because I've got a couple of the little things. Oh, he's D. Snider's son. Oh, look, he's handsome enough for our group. We could be, come here. You could be shiny with us. Fuck you. Fuck your groups. Your group sucks. And the fact that you think that your group is better than the other groups makes me sick. Blech, blech. So stop it and stop judging. Like, honestly, I became a geek because I didn't like the way geeks were treated. And I was like, well, I'm a geek then. Screw you. You want to fight? Because I'm a football player and I'm a lacrosse player. And I've always been just a defender of the innocent and a defender of the weak. When I found out what gays were dealing with, there was a good month in my youth where I was like, concocting this whole plan to come out as gay, even though I wasn't actually gay. And I was just like, I'm just going to tell everybody and whatever, just because they need help. And I'll just be gay until it seems like it's safe for the other gays. And then I'll go back to the other side of the fence.
You would have been a gay savior. You would have been a gavier.
A gavier, yes. I will be the gavier. Granted, I never went through with it, but I mean, nobody was going to know.
Okay.
I was going to fully commit to just, I'm gay. That's it. Yeah, I am. And I was going to go to marches and be really aggro about it and shit. I was very mad when I first heard how people were being persecuted for such a silly, stupid thing. But then, I get very excited about things, and then I have plans.
I didn't notice, Jesse.
You
have to learn to express yourself a little bit. I think that's part of the problem.
It is. I'm very bad at it.
What I really wanted to ask you, I mean, when you're writing the stories for comics, is it like you're submitting a novel, or is it kind of like you're doing like what they do in Hollywood where they go, what is it, a spec script where like you actually know the characters and you have to put their little nuances into it? Because I could kind of see it working either way.
Well, you got to lay the whole thing out. Well, it depends. So the original, not the original, but the Marvel style is what they refer to it as. Mm-hmm. When a writer just kind of breaks down approximately what's going on this page, this happens, on this page, that happens, on that page, that happens. And then after the fact, you go in and you write all the dialogue and you kind of clean all the stuff up. That's how a lot of books were created back in Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's day. Nowadays, that rarely happens, even though that's kind of awesome when you can do anything like that, because you can often get out of your artist's way a little bit to allow them to tell the story. Because to a certain degree, the full scripts are being done by these writers almost to do the heavy lifting for the artists in case they're not great. But if they are great, well, now you're getting in the way of greatness. So, but you have to lay everything out. So if you look at a comic book, like we did a really short run of the book that we're putting out on Kickstarter right now called King of Kings. And if you're doing a page here, you say, right, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those are 7 panels. So a typical script is going to have 1 dash and a description for that panel. Now, okay. I'll have to get specific. I want this panel to be really big. I want this to be the focus of the page, whatever it might be, on whatever the panels are. But I'm going to break down the approximate ordering of all the things. This happens, and this happens, and this happens. And, in order to tell a story with pictures, essentially you need 3 images. Granted, you can do it in less than that. But the mechanic for your mind is you show everybody how it starts, something new happens, and then you show them how it ends. And a comic is essentially this 1, 2, 3 continued for forever, because then your middle becomes your beginning, and this becomes your middle, and then there's a new one, because it can just keep building. Right. But yeah, somebody's got to lay that out. 9 artists out of 10, they're not writers. Mm-hmm. Most are when there is a artist writer who's killing it, I'm just always like, in awe of these people, because they're worth their weight in gold. Someone who could just go and automatically tell a great story all the time and be really compelling with the way they tell that story. But most of the time, it comes down to the writers. And I've always been a comic book guy who followed really great writers. And of course, there's great teams and people get really good working relationships. But, even me and one of my buddies, Steve Kurth, who he and I've been working together since the Hulk, and we do independent stuff all the time. And I've kind of put it up to Steve in terms of like, I'll give him the basics kind of thing of like, I don't know, such and such, if you want to go do it. And then he'll be like, all right, send me some pages. So, somebody like him, they become reliant on like, give me the support. And granted, a good writer is like, hey, these are the guidelines. I want you to feel like you have the freedom to be able to do what makes sense to you. So, that way you get really the best of both worlds, a really good collaboration. But it has to be all laid out, every single panel. And each panel, in this panel, he says, in the next panel, he says, there's a narration. It starts in this panel and it continues down. So all of it is being like meticulously laid out. I've said it like this. If you think of it in terms of comic books, in terms of films to comic books, a screenwriter in a film is just a screenwriter. And then there's other people doing different things. A comic book writer is the director. The artist is the casting person and the acting person and the locations person and the art director. But the writer is the editor who's figuring out how to edit everything right now as we speak. So like you write Law and Order SVU, somebody else edits that thing and figures out how it goes to commercial. You're writing that comic, you figure out how it goes to commercial. And it goes to commercial every page. Every page is a turn. There's a reset that's going on every single time. So you're writing in the knowing of the reading experience. And, when comic books are really being done right, it's being done with that utilization of that page turn. Because think about this, something that you've never thought about before. When you read a novel, you might get excited. You're on a plane and you're reading something, ooh, and you're like, you really want to get to the next page because it's coming, but you get to the next page and you have to keep reading in order to get to what's coming.
Okay.
Comic books are the only medium that does this. In a film, something exciting's happening and it just happens. There's nothing you could do about it. It just happened to you. Comic books, you read, you get to the end of the page, and you are responsible for scaring yourself, surprising yourself, making yourself laugh. It's you. It's your own hand. You grab the page, and now you physically flip it. And when you flip this page, the image can say everything. So you flip the page and now image. Whoa! I know. I don't have to read the novel. I know. I see the image says it all. That's the magic of comic books and the responsibility of comic books, that you're in charge of sort of like hiding images that your reader will uncover as they go, because they're an active participant in the process. And I think actually that's why comic books hit so hard and why I believe that they're the most powerful artistic medium on the planet, because it combines these two things, the words and the language to tell the story, but this art and the ability to just show somebody something and have that picture be worth 1,000 words. That's why people say a picture's worth 1,000 words. It really is. If you're writing comic books correctly and you turn that page, you're like, whoa, 1,000 words. I just read them 1 second.
Absolutely. And since you held it up, could you talk a little bit about King of Kings?
Oh, yeah. I saw
on audio, so they can't see it. So
yeah, I so appreciate talking about it. I'm just showing it to you, but the we just did this limited run of King of Kings, of just really, really limited for a convention last year. The book, I've been working on this for 12 years. I had a good friend of mine come to me at a convention, and he basically said, I've got this idea to do this Norse mythology battle of the bands. I want them as a rock band, and I want to do like a behind the music. And I went, oh, that's funny. And he was like, would you write it with me? Because I don't know anything about music. And I said, well, would you be willing to make Jesus the bad guy? And he said, yeah. And I was like, all right. Well, because for me, like I grew up kind of an atheist, became an agnostic, and then grew to become a spiritualist, like actually well into the production of this book. I became a spiritualist later after I had already thought all the things. But I was always sort of like against organized religion, against the dogma. When people start gathering together and going house to house to tell you how you're doing it all wrong and you need to see the light. You're like, That shit, I just want to shut, like, how dare you? How dare you assume that I am your evil or your lack of care? You may have found your way to this thing because you needed the thing. To assume that you are self-righteous, bringing the righteousness to other people, is just hubris, the likes of which I can't even begin to understand. And the idea that thousands and thousands of people got onto ships and boated their way to the freaking Greenland and Iceland and Finland and all these places and forced millions of people to convert to Christianity in the name of Christ, something that Jesus would never have done in a million years, never would have done that. Never. Worship me, I am the Son of God. You're going to admit that I'm the Son of God. That is not Jesus Christ. And anybody who took Jesus's message to mean, you know what we should do? We're going to go up there. We're going to tell those people what to do, is out of their minds. So for me, this whole book, the whole point of it was revenge on Catholicism for what they did in Jesus's name. And it's not Jesus. The character in my book, he's not Jesus. Jesus is a great guy. This guy is the guy that is the Jesus for all these a-holes who have been representing him, who have been pushy, who have been telling us that we're going to hell at high school and all this other shit. You people have ruined Jesus for us. As far as we're concerned, he sounds like a real asshole because you sound like a real asshole. And that's what we're hearing about Jesus from. So the whole point of the book was to lampoon this silliness of all these organized religions, to bring it all down to scale. The Muslim religion is just as equally smart or stupid or whatever the hell it is as the Catholic religion or the Jewish faith. It's all the same. This notion that one people is the chosen people and other people are not the chosen people, kiss my fucking ass. We are all the chosen people. We are all people. I look around and I see people. I don't see any difference between any of us. The idea that there are all these differences is just nonsense made up by these other people. And I am not one of them. And it is time to level this conversation to what it truly is. Just different ways of looking at the same thing. If we turn off the lights and I bring an elephant into the room and I ask 12 men to grab a different section of it and ask them all to describe the elephant, everybody's going to sound like they're talking about something different. I don't know. It's long and it's kind of bendy. It's really hard. It's almost like the trunk of a tree. I don't know. It's got like this fuzzy tuft at the end. I don't know. It's big. And when I smack it, it makes a sound. Well, all of you guys are hanging out with a different part of the elephant, but it's all the elephant. Yeah. Okay. And just because we aren't so good at describing the things to the point where we can realize that we're talking about the same thing, we're talking about pieces of this elephant, that doesn't mean that anybody is right or anybody is wrong. And the only people who are wrong are the ones who are going around telling others that they're wrong. No, you're wrong for judging the other people. It's not your job to go. It's your job to help. If you can help, if you can assist, if you can be of benefit to people. I say this to my kids all the time, and it's such a microcosm of the world. Something will happen, and it'll be like, I need help with the laundry because mommy just asked me to help with the laundry. And then, but it's like, Logan, you got to help me with the laundry. And Logan's like, I don't want to help with the laundry. And I go, Cass, you should have went in there and said, hey, Logan, Dad asked me if I could help with the laundry. Can you please help me with this? I know you don't want to do it either, but we got to do it. To which what? And then they always go, well, she would just say mean things anyway. No, she wouldn't. It was your approach. Your approach sucked. You had a really bad approach, and your approach got the response that it deserved. And most of the people's approach on planet Earth when it comes to spiritual thought and bringing us all together, it's wrong. The approach of, hey, I got the right answer, and let me go down to your level for a second and explain it. Like, kiss my butt, man. How about show up and be awesome? Until somebody goes, hey, man, what's your secret? How is it that you seem to have everything so together? Really wonderful. I'd love to have a little piece of what you have to offer. Make them work for that information about Jesus. Don't just give it out like you freaking know. Because at the end of the day, none of us know. We all have faith. And I mean, I could tell you, I know. And I do know. I know because I have that faith. But it's not something I can prove. It's not something you can prove, and better for me to make a Muslim or a Jewish person or whoever it might be that might be different than me feel good about being different than me while I'm around than to make them feel judged And like they are so different. And honestly, King of Kings, it's just, I want everybody to just laugh their asses off at how stupid we are as a society and hopefully come away with the very real notion that there are a lot of different ideas about how everything came into existence. They're all relatively the same. They're all equally valuable to one another. And, it's just like it's really funny. In our book, we have an atheist. We have a Frank Zappa parody character named Fred Zeppelin. And he's our atheist. And he's in the arena and he tells the guys in the book, it's my favorite moment of the book because I was an atheist for so long, and at a certain point I realized like the real big thing about the atheist is that we're jerks. There are people who are having real experiences all around us, and they can come and tell us about their experience, and we will legit be like, "You're insane." It's like you're insane. So I wrote this section of the book really for myself. So the atheist says, "So you're Satan, huh? And this is Asgard? This is all bullshit, right?" And then he gets set on fire by Satan. Satan sets him on fire, and then it's over. There you go. You don't want to participate in the conversation? That's fine. But there are thousands of conversations, thousands of them. You're the only ones who have come away with there's nothing. And when I say I'm the only one. I'm the only idiot who came away with there's nothing. You want to know why we came away with there's nothing? Because it's been removed from the textbooks. The textbooks only say we live in a very normal world and 2 + 2 = 4. And if all you do is read textbooks and you never pick up the biography of a friggin' yogi or something like that, a book on near-death experiences, a book on reincarnation, anything, holy crap, guys, I'm here to tell you, there is so much more out there. So much more out there. 28 years of being an atheist and then an agnostic because I wanted to be nice. But really, I just didn't believe in anything. I wanted us to stop being so stupid and crazy about religion for so long. And then I went, oh my goodness, I am missing a lot. And it's so much more interesting. It's so much more interesting when you get into quantum physics and you start to see what's really going on in reality. Reality is we're living in a freaking like a computer simulation. It's stupid. And these religions that are on the planet, they all have very interesting historical significance. There are consistent stories, and it's not about looking at what they think in Britain and what they think in Russia. It's about looking at what they think on this island and what this Indian tribe thought and what this Indian tribe thought and what this Indian tribe thought. And you start comparing and contrasting 1,000 different minor cultures, and then you go, dude, there's a really consistent narrative on planet Earth. I think maybe it's time that we start exchanging notes with each other instead of denying people's individual experiences. So the whole point of King of Kings is to make you laugh while we break apart your dogma and we break it down and we show you there's so many ways to pet the cat.
Very well put. Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of a lighter question because I know religion is it's always a touchy subject for anybody to discuss. So
it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be this thing. It's like, because at the end of the day, I, with very few exception, I do not see any religions that are not fundamentally trying to organize things in a positive way and bring the propagation of the human spirit forward. Yes, they may be single-minded about their group, and sometimes some of the thoughts that they might have about their specific group can be bothersome. But at the end of the day, when we just look at everything and we go, hey, look, these people are trying to come together in this way to show love, to worship this place and each other. I really think that religion isn't fundamentally bad. It's just when we organize and we get together and we start making all these very specific rules and all these things. And I'm sorry, guys, it's like that's not the way to teach anybody anything. But you can teach people something when you're more open and you're available. And if you've got the right answer, I want the right answer. So be nice to me and be nice to the people around you, because then maybe they'll want to know that answer. But if you're just telling them the answer, well, can't be too valuable. They just gave it to me.
And also that's the type of stuff that leads to cults too, because you got the person who's selling you on, if you go this way, I can guarantee you this. And there are no guarantees, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know you said you don't really get to listen to many podcasts, but there are some like YouTube things that you like checking out. So what are some of the stuff that you like to listen to, Jesse?
Well, I'm a huge Joe Rogan guy. I mean, I really think he's changed the face of podcasting. Granted, I don't think I'm his like mainstream audience, because like most of the guys that I see, like the mainstream dudes that will listen to him, they're a little bit more dunderheaded than I would say that I am. But Joe's willingness, Joe's not a dunderhead. He's a smart jock, and I'm a smart jock. So I appreciate him. And he's been willing to open the door to a number of subjects that are necessary to discuss, from conspiracy theories and nature and our health and our nutrition and exercise and the medical establishment, all these things. And the mainstream has been going after him because they are nervous. He has a huge, huge audience, and they are paying attention, and they are seeing that there's merit in something like Ancient Aliens. Yeah, there is merit. There's merit in all these conversations. And anybody who's ever heard anything like negative against that, it's such nonsense. He's great. So I'll watch a bunch of him. I have really good buddies of mine, Joe Lynch and Adam Green, who do a great podcast called The Movie Crypt, which actually my song Juggernaut is their theme song for it. It's all about making independent films. I don't make independent films, so I only listen sometimes, but I love their cast, and I try to support it whenever I do. I'm a guest on there sometimes. Those are the two really big ones, for me, as far as like, because I'll listen to entire casts if it's the right person, the right person on there. And, I generally, I like information densely packed together. And, on my podcast, Coolest Geek Alive, I try to just unload the information on people, because I can't stay. I see so many people, they listen to YouTube or podcasts at like 2 times speed because it's like too slow for them. Try doing that with my podcast, babe. Like, I can't understand a single word he's saying. Because that's right, because I know what speed you'd like to hear all the information at really quickly. But yeah, those are my 2 favorites, I think.
So we do have a portion called Shameless Self-Promotion in the show. And this is where you can get to let everybody know where they can follow you, or some of your upcoming projects.
Shameless self-promotion.
Well, I'm on Twitter. I'm coolest. Coolest Geek JBS. And that's kind of a place that I'm building right now. But I make music. I've got a band called DILF USA. We're about to put out a couple music videos that are incredible. We released a video already last Christmas called Countdown to Christmas, which is really fun. And another video prior to that called Shit the Bed, which is all about the Johnny Depp Amber Heard. Going on. It's pretty fun.
I've seen it.
Thank you. And we're continuing with that. We've got some really fun, funny, cool songs and videos coming out next, by the end of the year, we should have at least 1 or 2 out. And more to come. Like we're doing a cover record in the new year called Toxic Femininity, which is gender swaps of all these really, empowering songs sung by female pop stars. Mm-hmm. We're gender swapping them to boys. And it's really funny. I'm having a good time doing it. So music, if you like music, go follow DILF USA. We're on YouTube. We've got a channel there. And then, this podcast I'm doing, Coolest Geek Alive, it's a great place to keep up with me. I do letters, and we're always just talking about the stuff that's going on at the moment. But for me, this past week, I was just basically telling the story of my come up through comics and all these different companies that I've been working with, mm-hmm. as I'm promoting King of Kings, because King of Kings 12 years in the making. And I had, a divorce and 2 fires and so many things that almost stopped this thing from happening. When we tried to put it out on Indiegogo to fundraise the first issue a few years ago, and we got shadow banned. We didn't find out until Christmas this past year. And I thought it was the biggest, foolish mistake of my life, an embarrassment. Here I go. I put all this money, all this time into this campaign. And I personally knew every person who had donated money. And I canceled it after a week and a half because we couldn't get any traction because we were shadow banned. Nobody could see it. But for me, I'm like, I didn't make this book so that my friends and my family could pay for it to be made. I was like, this wasn't the point. The point was that I was going to find an audience, and the audience would be enthusiastic, and they would show up, and we'd sell them some comic books. But it didn't happen like that, and I really just I was at my wit's end about it. Didn't know how I was going to finish it, but knew I was going to eventually. Then when I found out that we were shadow banned, I was like, that's it. Going to Kickstarter, and I'm going to freaking kickstart this thing into the new year. So this book, labor of love on every conceivable level. Everybody who worked on the book owns a piece of the book. And honestly, for this fundraise, we're about to cross 5,000. You might be the person who pushes us over our limit, our goal. But our goal of 5,000 is just so that we could print the thing that we already made, not so that we could finish the second and third and fourth issue of the thing that we already started those issues, but we haven't finished them. The second issue's been drawn and lettered. The third issue's been drawn. The fourth issue's been written, and work on the graphic novel has been begun because we were going to do everything at once. But I ran out of money, and we needed help in order to do it. So really, we need your help to get this book done. It's going to be a while before we're doing anything on the lines of profiting, but I don't care about that. What I care about is getting this done. I've put 12 years of my life into making this great. I'm a fan of comedy, and I tried to make the funniest book that I could, something that would really make people just catch them off guard and make them laugh. In a place where they're usually uncomfortable, I want to make you laugh. And I really believe that me and my cohorts have done this. And maybe I wouldn't be able to say that if it was just me, but it's not just me. It's my co-writer, Mark Polton, who's brilliant in his own right, and my artist, David Witt, and my colorist, Andrew Dahlhaus, and our color designers, the Four Horsemen Studios. I got good taste. That's one thing I will give myself credit for. I have very good taste. I know what a good artist looks like. I know what a good writer is. I know what a good editor is. And when I find people who are great, I hold on to them, and I work with them. And everybody who I work with is just so good at what they do that even if I was awful at it, they would make me look good. And I really believe that this book has something for everybody. And it's the type of thing that you're going to want to talk about for years to come. You're going to want to share with people. And it's just a matter of time before it just continues to propagate and becomes the classic that it was always meant to be. So please, if you have a heart, if you have a time, just go to the Kickstarter website and look at the page. The page is hysterical by itself. Just laugh at the page. The page is free. The PDF is $5. Buy the PDF. I'll send it to you immediately. You can read it, and then you can come back and buy a physical copy of the book. But it's worth your time. I promise you. I gave it everything I had.
And I'm sure he did. There is no doubt about it. And by the way, before I let you go, best podcast theme I've heard in a long time.
Yeah, thank you, man. I wrote that.
I know. I was listening to the show, and then I was like, please tell me he's going to sing on this. And then all of a sudden I heard at the end, I was like, yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, we did. It's funny because it's not even like a song. It's literally, it's the theme. and we have this 30 or 40 second version of it that we opened the show with. And then we've got this 3.5 minute version of it that we end the song with, that we end the show with. But it's not a song. It is a theme song. And it's very much, it just tells the story of the damn podcast, but it's just very catchy and very kind of silly. And I love it. I when I came up with it a while ago, I'm like, I'm recording this for some sort of unspecified podcast. And I almost used it on a podcast with my friends called Coolest Alive, which was short-lived. We only did it for a second. And then when I got reached out to by the Podcast Playground to do something, I went, all right, let's go Coolest Geek Alive. And I got my theme song. So thank you so much for noticing. That'll be on Spotify soon enough.
There you go. Jesse Blaze Snider, thanks so much for hanging out here. And best of luck with King of Kings. We're going to be pushing, and of course, your Red Hot podcast, Coolest Geek Alive.
I so appreciate it. Thanks for having me, man.
Now it's time for Sherpa Samples. If you've got a podcast you'd like us to sample, contact us, and we'll mention your name on the show.
So hopefully you will be checking out Jesse's podcast, Coolest Geek Alive, and here are a bunch of others that you might want to check out because it's Sherpa Samples time. And of course, as you know, if there is a podcast that I have not yet sampled that you would like me to have a listen to, do me a favor and drop me a line at jimthepodcastsherpa@gmail.com. Or of course, you can message me on our social media pages at Sherpalution, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. and say, hey, you know what, check this one out. And if you do that, your name will get mentioned on the show. Woohoo! So where should we begin? No, really, that's the name of the first podcast that we want to talk about. Where should we begin with Esther Perel? Esther Perel is a psychotherapist known for her work with relationships. And we get to listen in on some of the therapy sessions that she has with some of her clients. And that's exactly what I got to hear when checking this out. It was an interesting story about a couple that dealt with infidelity issues and also the husband donating his sperm to another couple to raise children, and he never told his wife about it. So you can imagine where this is going. A lot of talking and a lot of therapy going on here. The Retrievals is a true story about what happened with some women who went for fertility treatments at Yale Hospital, and the story behind it is very horrific, but it goes into the details of what happened and why all these women suffered such pain, and it will make you angry and get you upset, but it's a powerful podcast. So if you like real-life drama, this is a podcast that you might want to check out. There were a bunch of political ones that I got to hear. It's weird, because I'm going basically down 3 different charts, and I just kind of fill in the blanks of the podcasts that I haven't spoken about. And sometimes we just get shows that are very similar in nature or have similar themes, and it's completely unplanned. And the rest of these 10 are kind of in groups of 3, which was really fascinating. So the political stuff, More Perfect is a podcast about the Supreme Court in the United States. The episode that I listened to was about Justice David Souter, who was kind of a mystery man on the Supreme Court. And this show is presented by WNYC. And when you hear WNYC, by the way, they make incredible podcasts. These guys, their audio is just beyond this world. They're the same people who make Stereolab, if you've ever heard it. Really incredible stuff. 538 Politics is a discussion about politics. And this episode that I listened to had to do with Bidenomics and the economy under President Joe Biden in the United States. I found out that the 538 has to do with how many votes there are in the Electoral College. So there's your little bit of trivia. And lastly, there is Stay Free with Russell Brand. I don't know if you know who Russell Brand is. He's actually done a previous podcast called Under the Skin, I believe. This one is a little more political oriented, and he talks to a lot of professors and the intelligentsia regarding a lot of political and economic issues. Russell Brand is a British comic who's got a really goofy sense of humor. He starred in the remake of Arthur, if I'm not mistaken. And in the episode that I listened to, he spoke to a guy named Jeffrey Sachs, who I believe is an economist. Speaking of comedy, there were 3 comedy podcasts that I came across. One, let's see, I think the nicest way we can give the title of this podcast, it was called F blank blank kFace. So you can kind of do the math here. And it's, I believe, like 4 or 5 comedians just being silly. And they do a lot of different things on their show. The episode that I listened to was one of the shorter episodes where they did something called Blindsided, where one of the hosts arranged for the others to listen to an episode of Mr. Belvedere, which was a comedy in the 90s or the 80s or something like that. And you couldn't really hear what parts of the episode they were listening to, but they were discussing it and they were going on about it. And, it's comedy. They are doing their comedic take on it. And they're from the United States. And over in Britain, there's 3 Bean Salad, which is 3 guys who are all British. And they talk about different subjects each week as well. And this week they talked about whales. It's very British humor. Whenever I say it's very British humor, that means I don't always get it, but when I do, I find it very funny. I think that's being honest, right? Okay. But yeah, if you enjoy British humor, check those guys out. They were pretty good. And the last one, this is from Australia, and this is another comedic trio, and it's called the Auntie Donna Podcast. There's actually no Auntie Donna in the podcast. It's just 3 guys, and I believe they had a special guest producer on the show, a woman. I forgot what her name was. I'm sorry. And a lot of silliness also. And again, the humor seemed very Australian. So I just get American humor, I guess. I don't know why. I just do. And even then, I'm kind of not good at it either. I believe they got their name because an aunt of theirs was a fan of doner kebabs. I do not know what a doner kebab is. And then it became Auntie Donna. Any of my Australian friends over there want to tell me what a doner kebab is? Message me on social media. Let's teach everybody. That works. So we did a little listening to the true crime podcasts, and Small Town Murder is hosted by two comedians, and the small town in this episode that I listened to was in Liberty, New York, and this had to do with a woman who had a mental breakdown and stabbed her mother 120 times with a scissor. So it was kind of graphic and kind of gruesome, but they got through it. I don't know how comedians get to do a show like this. That podcast kind of reminded me of the male version of My Favorite Murder for some reason. And so if you're fans of My Favorite Murder and you want to hear guys doing that, maybe you want to check out Small Town Murder. Another podcast that had to do with true crime was Texas Monthly True Crime, Stephenville, and it had to do with the murder of a woman who had separated from her husband. I guess they've done various incarnations of this as well, so this is just kind of a small series within this podcast. And lastly, I'm not making this up. This was the podcast I think actually ended in 2022, but it's still in the podcast charts as I was going through it. And again, I'm not making this up. This is real. You can listen to this podcast. It's called Who Shat on the Floor at My Wedding? It has to do with these two British women who got married on a boat. And apparently someone left a little present on the floor. It was in the bathroom. It wasn't on the dance floor or anything like that. It wasn't near the wedding presents. Somebody wasn't leaving them a wedding present of poo. And they treated it like a comedic true crime episode. And they actually have people hooked up to lie detector tests and their forensics evidence. And they try and figure out we'll just say who took a dump on the floor. I didn't listen all the way through. I listened to the trailer in the first episode. It's definitely an interesting setup, and I'm just hoping that by the 13th episode, they find the poopatrator. I mean, the perpetrator. They can't do Who Shat on the Floor in the Sherpa Chalet because every once in a while they let the yak run loose, and, if it's burrito night, a yak is only a yak. And, all right, so just be careful where you're stepping, and we will step carefully into the outro.
Be a rebel. Follow the show at Sherpolution on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
A very special thanks to Jesse Blaze Snider for swinging on by the Sherpa Chalet. Make sure you check out his podcast. It's really interesting. I really enjoyed it. It is called, once again, Coolest Geek Alive. And also, if you want to donate to his Kickstarter project for launching King of Kings, I'm sure he'd greatly appreciate it if you do so. And also, check out his band DILF USA. I didn't get the chance to touch on it in the interview, but amazing how a band can combine rock and roll and a great sense of humor all in one. Really amazing stuff, too. Again, thanks so much, Jesse. Now, if you like this show, you know what you can do. Just leave us a nice review on Apple Podcasts, and if you let me know, you will be entered in a contest, and you can win podcast merchandise. Wow. And also, if you want to hear some more of the show, you can hear more episodes on podcast apps everywhere. My website, sherpolution.com, or the Sherpolution YouTube page. It's all over the place. We want you to be part of the Sherpolution, and come on and join us and have some fun. So until next time, we will be looking forward to you listening to our next episode, which will be next Wednesday, because new episodes are out every Wednesday, right here on your favorite podcast app or wherever you are listening. Mr. Bruce, I think it's time to head on out of here. So until then, folks, viva la Sherpolution.
Thanks for listening to Too Many Podcasts. Please disperse. You can go home now. I said you can go home now. Viva la Sherpolution. Viva la Sherpolution. Oh. Yell, come back now, you hear?
You know, Rebels, if you've been checking out some of my promotional ads on social media, you'll be aware that I have been using a lot of AI programs to help me create ads. But you know what? There's a lot more uses for AI than just funny little videos. And I'd like to introduce one of our new sponsors, Podium. It is a leader in creating AI tools for podcasters. Now, let's say you've got a podcast, or maybe you're even thinking of doing a podcast. You're probably wondering, well, how can AI be integrated with your workflow? I'll tell you about Podium. As a podcaster, you know that writing show notes and creating chapters and transcribing episodes takes a lot of time, and it can cost you a lot of money too. But you know what? That's where Podium comes in. It's an AI tool designed specifically for creators and podcasters with the goal of making post-production tasks quick and easy. And in just a few minutes, Podium generates show notes, chapters, summaries, clips for social media, a full transcript, suggested episode titles, social media posts, and more. Whew, that's a lot of work for one little program. Your show notes are key to your podcast's success because it helps new listeners find your podcast and they'll know if it's a fit for them. You know, kind of like Too Many Podcasts. It also improves your SEO, that's your search engine optimization. Ooh, big phrase there. And overall accessibility. And with Podium, you can focus on creating a great podcast and let Podium's AI do the heavy lifting. But Podium isn't just for solo creators and podcasters. It's a game changer for editors, producers, marketers, agencies, and production studios. Teams that use Podiums are able to increase workloads, decrease turnaround times, and improve their quality. How does it work? Very easy. First, go to Podium's website, and you'll see that link that's right there in the show notes. You get 3 hours free just to try it. Pretty cool, huh? And using that link also supports this show as well. And you know what else happens? Because I'm a good guy. You use my link, you will get 50% off for your first month. So visit the site, upload an MP3 file, and download your files, and that's it. And if you need anything else, you can use Podium GPT to generate articles and any marketing copy you might need in seconds. Instant show notes, transcripts, chapters for your podcast or channel. This will level up that podcast. So check out Podium today.